Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into the harsh, unforgiving life of a witch in 1600s Europe. The relentless struggle of surviving in a world that wants you dead. Think you could make it. Adorable, like a kitten trying to do algebra. Before we get started, take a moment to like and subscribe, only if you genuinely dig what I'm sharing here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing this story connect across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's slip into the shadowed world of witches, fear, and fire. Ready to see why you wouldn't survive? Let's get into it. You wake up before dawn because the chickens won't shut up. You don't own any chickens. That's the first problem. The second problem is that Widow Marta swears she saw you whispering to a toad last week, and the town has been itching for a scapegoat ever since someone's goat gave birth to a six-legged disappointment. Enter you female, strike 1. Opinionated, strike 2. And once offered unsolicited herbal advice, you're out. Being accused of witchcraft in 1600s Europe is less about what you did and more about what you didn't do, namely, die quietly. You think this is all absurd, of course, but so did the last woman. She said something cheeky about the mayor's bald spot and ended up being troiled by firewood. Spoiler, the fire won. Let's talk about the evidence against you. First, your neighbor claims your hair doesn't tangle when it rains. Suspicious. Second, your garden blooms unnaturally well, probably because you water it, but nobody cares about that. Third, you once danced alone in the woods. For exercise, with no man present. Obviously, Satan was involved. You're not even a witch. You just read. That's it. You read a book one time, and it wasn't the Bible. You might as well have summoned Beelzebub in the town square using goat blood and Latin. But here we are, the town elder, who smells like cheese and disappointment, calls a meeting. You're not invited. Instead, they just show up outside your cottage. Pitchforks optional but heavily implied. You answer the door with a smile and a fresh apron. Wrong move. Smiling makes them nervous. Happy women are rarely saints. And you open your mouth to speak, and a man in a feathered hat yells, "She speaks in tongues." It was English. But fine. Now you're being dragged to the village square, which is less of a square and more of a muddy, judgmental oval. They tie your hands, because clearly if you're innocent, you won't mind being treated like a criminal. Your dog, who's smarter than everyone here combined, barks in protest. He's called a familiar, and is promptly kicked. You try not to scream. You still scream. Let's take a moment to reflect. You are now considered dangerous, because a man got indigestion after eating your bread, and someone's baby has been crying more than usual. Both signs of demonic activity, clearly. Definitely not spoiled yeast or teething. It's you. The trial is scheduled for next week. Spoiler, you don't get to speak at it. But tonight? Tonight is for stewing. Literally and emotionally. They throw you in a cell that used to store grain, but now stores regrets and people named Agnes. It smells like damp shoes and angry ghosts. Your cellmate is a toothless woman who claims she once saw a cabbage levitate. She's not helpful. You think about escape. But where would you go? You own 2 shoes and 0 horses. Every man in a 10-mile radius thinks you've been hexing his potatoes, and the only place more dangerous than jail is being caught outside jail while female and literate. Your options? Limited. Your plan? Non-existent. You cry. A rat cries back. Welcome to the witch experience. There is no such thing as a fair trial when the judge already thinks you fly naked with the devil on Tuesdays. You're pulled from your damp grain, cell at dawn, eyes barely open, hair doing whatever it wants. They give you no breakfast. Apparently witches don't get porridge. Porridge is for innocent people and cows. You get tied wrists and a shove uphill toward the Old Town Chapel, which they've repurposed for witch trials. You know, because nothing says divine justice like accusing someone under a stained glass window of Mary holding baby Jesus. The courtroom consists of a long table, a dozen chairs, and a lot of glaring. It's like your aunt's dining room during a family argument, except this time the stakes are public execution. The jury is made up of old men whose hobbies include sharpening sticks and believing rumors. The judge is the same man who once asked you for a love potion. You said no. Now here you are. He slams a gavel down on the table. The sound echoes through your ribs like thunder with an agenda. Name, he demands. You say it. He squints. That's a witch's name. Your names are witch names when you've already made up your mind. Then comes the reading of the charges. It's a long list, mostly based on the town gossip mill, which turns every sneeze into sorcery. The clerk reads them out with grim importance. You were seen walking barefoot through grass, clearly to absorb moon power. You looked at the baker's wife, with a knowing gaze. What? You were spotted collecting mushrooms. Not allowed unless you're dying. You have a cat that doesn't run from people. Devil's agent. You once predicted rain, and then it rained. The witch. And each charge is followed by gasps from the townspeople who've shown up for the drama. For many, this is the highlight of their month. You're their Netflix. Someone hands out small meat pies like it's theatre. Then, a woman steps forward as a witness. It's Widow Martyr, of course. She's wearing black and holding a Bible like it's a sword. She swears she saw you whisper to a bird. You did. You said, "Pretty bird." But according to her, it was a summoning. Another witness claims his cow stopped producing milk after you looked at it funny. You weren't looking at the cow. You were looking at your own shoe because it was on backwards. But logic isn't welcome here. Logic is for heretics and mathematicians. Then comes the testimony from a child. A small, sticky boy is pushed forward. He claims he saw you fly, as in off the ground, into the sky, with bats, he says. Were there bats? The judge asks seriously. Lots, the boy nods, picking his nose. That's enough for them. You try to protest, but every word you speak is interpreted as either a hex or a confession. Silence means guilt. Speaking means guilt. Crying means hysterics, which means guilt. Laughing means the devil's taken hold of you, which unsurprisingly also equals guilt. A scholar stands up next. He's the town physician. His last patient died from leeches and too much prayer, but he's considered the expert. He examines your hands and declares, "These are the hands of a potion maker. They're just hands. But apparently soft palms mean alchemy and rough ones mean spell casting. Either way, you lose." To seal the deal, the judge reaches into a box and pulls out a large metal pin. You know what's coming. The witch prick. They believe witches have a devil's mark somewhere on their bodies. Some spot that feels no pain and doesn't bleed. This could be a mole, a freckle, or literally a pimple. Everyone has one. That's the point. They pin your arms down and start poking. You scream. They nod. She screams like someone trying to hide something, one man says. Eventually, they find a tiny scar on your back that doesn't bleed when poked. There, says the judge triumphantly. The mark. It's from falling off your bike as a child. But sure, Satan, you're asked if you'd like to confess. Confession, in this case, means agreeing with everything they've said and inventing a few more crimes for flavor. Most people confess just to die faster. You say nothing. Your jaw clenches. You stare straight ahead. Brave, maybe. But bravery doesn't end well here. The judge sighs. Then she shall be tested. That phrase turns the room colder. You already know what's coming, the water ordeal. Because obviously the best way to prove your innocence is by tying your hands and feet and throwing you into a freezing river. If you float, you're guilty. If you sink and drown, you're innocent. Congratulations. The court adjourns. People cheer. Some children throw rocks at you on the way back to your cell. One old woman spits on your shoes and mutters about her soup being too salty last Tuesday. You sit back in your cell, heart pounding, wrists aching. You stare at the wall, where someone scratched a tolly into the stone. 57 lines. You wonder if those were people or days. You're not sure which is worse. Outside your window, the town bell rings. Somewhere a bird sings, probably a spy. You close your eyes and prepare to meet the river. The river's name is something poetic, like the Silver Stream or St. Margaret's Vein. Doesn't matter, to you it's just cold. Not refreshing cold. More like goodbye internal organs. Cold. They say it tests your purity. In truth, it tests your lungs, your ankles, and your ability not to look horrified while tied up like old laundry. You'll march to the river at dawn, always dawn, because nothing says divine justice like frostbite and early light. The crowd is already there, families, drunks, merchants hawking soup near the bank like it's a village carnival. Some people bring bread. One man brings a date. You, meanwhile, bring nothing except the creeping realization that you are going to die surrounded by people who once complimented your apple pie and are now chanting, "Drown the witch." They've tied your hands behind your back. Your legs are bound too, just to be sure you can't cheat with your obviously demonic swimming skills. A priest stands at the edge of the river, holding a Bible with soggy corners. He mutters a blessing. You think it's for the rope, not you. Water rejects the unclean. The judge announces. He's standing on a makeshift platform made of wobbly wood and smugness. If she floats, she is in league with the devil. If she sinks, God shall have mercy on her soul. The logic is exquisite, only a witch could survive drowning. So if you don't drown, they'll kill you. And if you do drown, oops. Turns out you were innocent the whole time. Thoughts and prayers. A few boys giggle behind you. One is the same sticky child who said you flew with bats. He's eating a boiled egg and pretending it's your head. His mother beams with pride. Two men hoist you up, one on each arm. Their breath smells like onions and cowardice. You wonder if they'll remember this moment, or just tell themselves you deserved it. You don't get to say anything. Not a last word. Not a goodbye. You barely suck in a breath before you're tossed like a sack of guilt into the river. The cold hits you like a hammer made of regret. You sink instantly. Your dress, already heavy with shame and swamp stink, drags you downward. Mud clouds your vision. You flail, but the bindings are tight. Water crashes into your mouth, up your nose, down your throat. You scream, but it just makes more room for water. Above, the crowd leans in. She's sinking. Then, wait, she's floating. You break the surface, coughing violently, eyes wide, spitting river like it's cursed soup. For one glorious second, you think you're alive and safe, and maybe they'll see how cruel this is. Then the judge stands up and shouts, "Witch!" The crowd explodes. You're pulled out of the river like a damp loaf of sin. Someone shoves you into the dirt. You land hard, cheek to gravel, coughing water and bile, and what may or may not be a leaf. The priest crosses himself. The baker's wife cries, "Not for you. Probably for the drummer." The wet ropes around your wrists are replaced with fresh, dry ones. Can't have the devil slipping away due to soggy knots. You're shaking uncontrollably now, not from fear, but from the fact that you were just almost murdered in a public ceremony disguised as community bonding. You're dragged through the streets, dripping and shivering. Someone offers you a blanket and then changes their mind. "She'll curse the wall," they mutter. Back in the cell, your teeth rattle like dice in a cup. You strip off your clothes, which are soaked, freezing, and full of pond. A bucket is tossed in with you. Water. Not for drinking, just in case the devil tries to climb out of your mouth overnight. It's unclear how that would work. They don't explain. Night falls. You dream of firewood. In the morning, you receive the news the test proved you're a witch. Congratulations. You passed the world's worst exam. Your prize, execution. You're allowed a final meal. It's stale bread and a single turnip. You bite it anyway, not because you're hungry, but because chewing helps stop the shaking. A guard comes by to tell you you'll be hanged tomorrow. "We stopped burning them," he says casually. "Too smoky." People complained. He sounds disappointed, like he misses the old days of screaming infernos and crispy heretics. The next day, you'll stand on a wooden platform again, this time with a rope instead of a river. They'll let you say one thing before the drop, but only if it's short and God-themed. You wonder what you'll choose. I'm innocent. Useless. You're all fools. True, but unhelpful. Long live the Queen. Might as well go for irony. Back in your corner, you curl up against the wall. The stone is still damp. You think about running, but you can't feel your legs, and even if you could, where would you go? The forest. It's full of wolves and judgment. The next town, news travels faster than witches. You stare at the ceiling, count the cracks, and wait for someone to come in and ask you to confess again. They will. They always do. And maybe this time you'll say yes. Not because it's true, but because you're tired of pretending that survival was ever the goal. They wake you before dawn. Again. At this point, you've accepted that being burned, drowned, or hanged always starts with someone shouting, "Up," before the sun's even finished putting on its hat. It's never, "Take your time, condemned witch. Enjoy a final sleep in." You're handed a scratchy robe. It's the color of oatmeal and regret. It smells like the last person who wore it did not survive the experience. You put it on anyway, because dignity packed up and left somewhere between the river and the cold turnip dinner. A priest is waiting outside your cell. He's got a crooked cross, watery eyes, and the breath of someone who drinks to forget the job. He offers to absolve you. For what? You ask. For your sins. You raise an eyebrow. I haven't sinned. He nods, sadly. They all say that. He opens a tiny Bible. It's mostly mold and Latin. He mumbles through a blessing while sneaking glances to make sure you're not trying to summon a demon or levitate out of your shoes. You don't have the energy to levitate. You barely have the energy to exist. They walk you to the gallows. The entire town shows up, again. Some of these people have never once shown up to help dig a ditch or mend a fence, but are hanging. That's peak social engagement. It's like live theatre, except you're the main act and the script ends in spinal trauma. The platform is wooden, square, and too clean. They must have scrubbed it just for you. Someone has hung sprigs of dried lavender nearby, like a wedding decoration for a deeply cursed bride. You're marched up the steps. Each one creaks like it's announcing your doom. A rooster crows in the distance. A baby cries. Your knees wobble. The executioner is already waiting. He's enormous, not just tall, wide, like someone stuffed 3 men into one shirt. He wears a black hood, mostly for tradition, and carries the smell of garlic, leather, and very mild remorse. He nods at you. You nod back. It's weirdly polite. The crowd goes quiet. The judge from your trial stands below, reading from a scroll that has far too many words on it. It's full of phrases like dark arts, unnatural conduct, and communing with false spirits, all spoken with the bored intonation of a man who's done this a few too many times. When he finishes, there's a pause. They ask you for your final words. You consider the classics. I'm innocent. May God forgive you. You're all idiots. But instead, you say, I hope your bread never rises again. A gasp. Someone in the crowd shouts, she cursed the wheat. Perfect. The noose is looped around your neck. It's rough, thick, and smells faintly of mildew and inevitability. The rope itches. Not that it matters, you won't have it on long. The executioner whispers, sorry. You almost thank him. But then the floor disappears. There's a moment, not long, but long enough, where you are falling. Your stomach lurches. The crowd blurs. The sky spins. Then, snap. Or maybe not. See, here's the thing they don't tell you about hangings, it doesn't always go right. Sometimes, if they get the length of rope wrong, you don't die quickly. You just hang. As in flailing, twitching, choking on your own neck. You are that lucky winner. Your neck doesn't snap. Instead, it stretches like taffy made of agony. You kick. Your eyes bulge. Your throat makes a sound no throat should make. The crowd watches with an uneasy mix of awe and discomfort. This isn't the tidy execution they came for. Eventually, the twitching stops. They wait a few extra minutes, just to be sure. Then your body is cut down. It lands with a thud. A few kids throw stones at it, just in case you're faking. They bury you outside the church walls. Not in the cemetery, no. Witches don't get headstones or holy ground. You're dumped into a hole, covered in dirt, and forgotten faster than last week's cheese scandal. But, and this is important, you're not quite dead. Your story. Oh, it's not over yet. Because a passing herbalist, an old woman with bones like branches and a sharp sense of irony, digs you up. She was watching the whole thing from the forest edge, eyes narrowed, hands folded, and she recognizes something the townspeople don't. You were never a witch. But maybe, just maybe, you should have been. She pulls you from the shallow grave, mutters a few things in a language that tastes older than time, and presses a stinking poultice to your throat. You can't breathe, then you can. You can't see. Then you blink. The first word you croak out is what? The woman grins, missing half her teeth. You're not done yet. Girl, you survived. Somehow. Not because the town showed mercy. Not because the gods intervened. Not even because of your own strength. You survived because an actual witch was watching, and she decided it was time to train a successor. Turns out, death isn't the end. It's the interview. And you just got the job. You're not dead. Let's start there. Technically you were. For a minute. Maybe 3. Long enough to earn a burial. short enough to be snatched back before the worms RSVP'd. Your lungs don't appreciate the second chance. Every breath feels like sucking air through a quill pen. Your throat is a pulsing, purple roadmap of rope trauma. The woman who saved you smells like boiled roots and defiance. Her name is Oscar, no last name, no explanation. She doesn't offer a title like Mistress, or High Witch of the Gloaming Forest. Just Oscar, like a threat wrapped in burlap. She takes you to a hut. It's deep in the woods, past where the sunlight gives up and most starts voting. You stumble the whole way, barefoot and half alive, dressed in a dead woman's robe. She moves silently, her cane clicking against tree roots like a metronome for doom. The hut is not welcoming. It leans at an angle like it's tired of being a house. Herbs dangle from the rafters. Bones clink in the windows like wind chimes designed to discourage optimism. The front door is covered in chalk marks that scream, "Keep out," in languages older than guilt. You hesitate at the threshold. She looks back. In or out, but choose quick. Things in this forest don't like indecision. You step inside. Good choice. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of damp wood, garlic, something sulphurous, and maybe goat. The furniture is all mismatched and handmade. Jars line every shelf, labeled with things like wolf's tongue, crow's breath, and crops dried. A cauldron bubbles in the corner, doing absolutely nothing to calm your nerves. Oscar tosses her cloak aside and starts sorting dried mushrooms like it's just another Tuesday. You, meanwhile, collapse onto a stool. She eyes you. You want revenge? You blink. What? She repeats, slowly this time. Do you want revenge? You think about the rope, the water, the lies, the smug face of that feather hat judge, the boy with the egg, the baker's wife and her eternal stink eye. Yes, you rasp. Good, she says, like that was the correct answer on a cursed pop quiz. And so begins your training. Lesson 1: Witchcraft is not fun. Forget the dancing under moonlight and laughing with owls. It's sore fingers, strange smells, and being shouted at by a woman who thinks sarcasm is a love language. There are no brooms, no cats, just mortar and pestle, bloodstains that won't come out, and a daily reminder that the world hates what it doesn't understand. Lesson 2: Magic is math, but with guts. It's all ingredients and ratios and intentions. 1 dead beetle, 1 drop of regret, plus 3 pinches of ash to charm that might keep mice out of your socks. Might. No guarantees. Oscar says the magic listens, but it also laughs. Lesson 3: The forest watches. You're warned never to lie in the woods. Not even a little. Say the wrong thing, and the trees remember. Forget an offering, and the mushrooms will wilt, the paths will twist, and something with too many eyes will follow you home. You learn quickly. Partly because you're terrified, partly because there's nothing else to do. You can't go back. You're officially dead in town records, which, to be fair, are just a charcoal list nailed to the chapel wall. Still, your old life is a closed door. A locked one, on fire. At night you dream of ropes and rivers, but also of voices, soft ones, urging you to keep going. Maybe the forest, maybe the magic, maybe you've finally gone mad. Doesn't matter. You're not turning back. Maybe months. Time in the woods bends like spoon metal. You eat root stew, drink bark tea, and discover you're excellent at brewing things that smell like failure, but work like miracles. You sleep on straw. You bathe in a stream that bites. One day, Oscar throws a scroll at you. It's old cracked. Written in ink that glistens like oil. The words shift when you try to read them. Your turn, she says. For what? Spellcraft. Big one. Make a mark, you don't know where to start. So you write what you know. Pain. Justice. That awful thud of the trapdoor under your feet. The laughter. The crowd. You grind your herbs with rage. Mix the roots with memories. Drip your blood into the bowl like it's ink. You whisper your name into it. Not the one they used to shout, but the one you've earned in silence and frost and darkness. The bowl glows. The hut creaks. The forest listens. You don't smile, but something inside you does. You've made your first real spell. It tastes like thunder. Later, you ask Oscar what happens next. She shrugs. Next, you decide what kind of witch you want to be. You pause. And if I don't want to be a witch, she snorts. Too late. Neck girl. Fair enough. That night, you walk out into the woods alone. No cloak, no charm, just you, your bruises, and the bones of your old self. You kneel beneath an old oak tree. You press your palm to the moss, and you speak. Not a curse, not a prayer, just a promise. You will not forget, you will not forgive, and you will never, ever be powerless again. By now, you've learned the hard way that being a witch is less about potions and more about survival. You've swapped your old life for a new one soaked in secrecy and shadows. Your name? Tossed like last year's cabbage. The townsfolk whisper your absence like a ghost story, but that's just the beginning. Because the thing about witches, real witches, is that they grow. Not in height or muscle. No, witches grow infamy. That's the dark fruit that ripens fastest. Word spreads like wildfire, fueled by fear, ignorance, and a pinch of envy. Somewhere, someone has started calling you the Witch of the Withered Woods. Not because you call yourself that. It's what happens when your enemies run out of insults and start inventing nightmares. People talk about you in hushed tones over smoky hearths. Mothers warn their daughters, don't wander near the woods. The Witch of the Withered Woods will see you. Hunters claim your shadow stalks the edge of their camps. Children say they hear your laughter carried on the wind, an eerie cackle that sets their teeth on edge. It's flattering in a twisted way, but also deeply inconvenient, because now everyone knows you exist, and they want you dead. One morning, as the sun barely warms the earth, Oscar shoves a bundle of twigs and bark at you. Message from the village. She says, voice low. You unwrap it cautiously. It's a note, scrawled on rough paper stained with something suspiciously like blood. Leave. Now. Or burn. You stare at the words, heart tightening. The villagers have had enough of your whispered curses and strange lights flickering in the forest. They want you gone. Permanently. Oscar shrugs. They think fire cleanses. We know better. But leaving isn't simple. Your new home is in the heart of the forest, an island of shadow and moss surrounded by suspicion. If you flee, you risk wandering into worse dangers: bandits, wolves, the winter's bite. You pack what you can: herbs, your spellbook, a collection of scraps and memories, the pouch of roots Oscar gave you. You tie your hair back tight. You whisper a protection charm Oscar taught you. You step beyond the threshold of the hut, into a world that has already decided your fate. Traveling isn't easy. The woods are thicker than ever, as if trying to hold you back. Branches snag your clothes. The soil is soft and wet, sucking at your feet. At night, the forest sings songs you don't understand. Sometimes sweet, sometimes mournful. The moon watches with a pale eye. You keep moving. Days pass. You survive on what you find: berries, roots, rainwater. Your hands become callosed. Your eyes sharp. Your senses alive in ways they never were in the village. You're alone, but not lonely. The forest accepts you. The animals don't flee. Even the birds seem curious. But peace is fleeting. On the seventh night, when the moon is just a sliver, you hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Not human. You freeze. A figure emerges, a man wrapped in a cloak woven from shadows. His eyes glow faintly, like embers beneath ash. You should not be here, he says, voice low and rough. You clutch your pouch tighter. Who are you? He smiles, but there's no warmth. I am the hunter sent to end your curse. You swallow. This is the moment. The final reckoning. But instead of attacking, he holds out a hand. Join me. Help me stop the others like you. Others. You blink. He steps closer, revealing a face carved from stone and storm clouds. There are many witches, he says. Not all are as kind as you. We protect the balance. Join us, or perish. You consider the offer? Trust is scarce as clean water. But so is survival. Why should I believe you? He shrugs. You shouldn't. Then he turns and disappears into the night, leaving a chill that settles deep. You realize your journey has only just begun. Back at the hut, Oscar waits. You tell her about the hunter, the offer, the warning. She nods, eyes gleaming. They're coming. The witch hunters. You thought the villagers were your only threat. Now, there's something darker. Oscar hands you a new charm, a black stone wrapped in silver wire. For protection and power, you clutch it, feeling its pulse. The forest seems to lean in closer. Your name may be forgotten in the village, but here, in the shadow of ancient trees and whispered magic, you are becoming something else. Something they fear, the witch of no name. The forest feels different now. Heavy. Watching. Waiting. You're no longer just the woman they whispered about. You're the witch who survived drowning, hanging, and exile. the one who answers to no name, but the one they fear. And because the world works in cruel symmetry, that means hunters are coming. They come first as rumors, strange men in black cloaks seen at the village edge, strange fires burning far in the woods, missing animals and missing people. The village grows silent, doors bolt tight, windows shuttered. You can feel it, the cold weight of inevitability. Then one morning, the silence breaks. A knock. 3 sharp raps on the hut door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor asking for sugar. The knock of someone who intends to take something, maybe your life. You clutch your pouch and step toward the door. The forest seems to hold its breath. Outside stand 2 men, cloaked in black leather, faces obscured by wide-brimmed hats. One holds a crossbow, the other a heavy wooden staff topped with a carved raven. "Wasik, the witch of the withered woods," the one with the staff says. His voice is calm, but there's steel underneath. You hesitate. Do you fight? Flee? Bargain? You're not sure what options remain. Before you answer, Oscar emerges from the shadows behind you, a knife gleaming at her hip. "The witch is here," she says, but she doesn't want trouble. The men nod once and step inside. You offer no hospitality. You're not interested in small talk or their reasons. They claim to be witch hunters, ordained by the church and sworn to purge evil. You know their kind well, merciless, dogmatic, cruel. Their questions come fast. Have you consorted with demons? Do you curse the crops? Are you guilty of blasphemy? You answer nothing. They grow impatient. One steps forward, pressing the staff into your chest, cold and accusing. "We will find your guilt, one way or another." You remember the noose, the river, the flames. You will not be taken again without a fight. Oscar whispers, "Prepare yourself." A faint glow surrounds your hands. The air thickens, the hunters stiffen. Magic, raw and untamed, surges through you. You don't control it yet, but it answers your will. The hunter with the crossbow aims and fires. The bolt whistles past your ear and shatters a nearby tree. Oscar yells and lunges, knocking the hunter off balance. You take the moment to chant under your breath. A shaky spell, but enough. The ground trembles. Roots burst through the earth, twisting and snaring. The hunters curse and fight. The staff blazes with holy fire, cutting through vines like a blade. You dodge, breath ragged, heart pounding. This is no longer about survival. It's war. The battle lasts minutes but feels like hours. When the dust settles, the hunters lie wounded and trapped, snarling curses and threats. Oscar stands beside you, breathless but fierce. "You've got power," she says. "More than I expected." You nod, exhausted and exhilarated. The hunters promise revenge before they retreat into the shadows. The village reacts swiftly. Whispers become shouts. Rumors of your magic spread like wildfire. Children cry at night. Markets empty. Priests rally the frightened. You watch from your forest sanctuary, torn between relief and dread. You're stronger now, but so is the hatred. Oscar helps you prepare. "We need allies," she says. "More witches, more power." Together, you begin reaching out, using the forest's magic to send messages hidden in dreams and smoke. Not all answer. Many are afraid. Some come. Women and men marked by fire and sorrow, survivors like you. You gather them quietly, teaching, healing, preparing. Each has a story of betrayal, of loss of strength. Together you form a circle, a coven. But the hunters are relentless. They scour the woods, setting traps, interrogating villagers, burning anything they suspect. You lose friends. You lose hope. One night, Oscar is taken. You find her cell empty except for a single feather and a smear of blood. Your heart breaks, but you will not fall. Not yet. The witch hunters will come again, and next time, you'll be ready. The forest hums with life and dark energy. It's no longer just your refuge. It's your fortress. The coven has grown from a trickle of whispers to a tide of defiant souls. Each new face carries scars and secrets, and each new hand joins yours in the tangled web of spells and survival. You never asked for this power. You never wanted it, but it found you, like a poison flower blooming in cracked earth. Your days are a blur of teaching, tending, and fighting. Teaching the young witches to harness their gifts without getting themselves killed. Tending wounds, both physical and spiritual. Fighting the creeping fear that the hunters will break through your sanctuary and tear you apart. Every victory tastes bitter. Every spell cast carries a cost. Oscar's disappearance weighs heavy on you. You don't know if she's alive, tortured, or worse. You tell yourself she wouldn't abandon you, but the silence gnaws. Your coven meets in secret. The air is thick with incense and resolve. Each face wears determination and shadows. Together, you craft your strongest enchantments yet. Protective wards on the trees, illusions to mislead trackers, potions to heal and poisons to strike. You become a leader, not by choice, but by necessity. Your voice, once timid and unsure, now carries authority. You learn to command without raising your voice, to inspire without promises you can't keep. But leadership demands sacrifice. Some nights, you lie awake, haunted by memories of your old life, the village square, the river, the noose. You wonder if the person you were is dead, or if she's just waiting beneath the surface, buried beneath layers of vengeance and power. The coven's strength grows, and so does your confidence. One evening, as twilight bleeds into night, a messenger arrives. An old friend from your past, someone you thought lost to suspicion and death. She brings news the hunters plan a massive raid. Not just your forest, but every rumored witch's haven within 100 miles. The message is clear: the hunt will become a war. You call the coven together. The firelight dances on grim faces. We can't run anymore, you say. We fight, for ourselves. For those who can't, some nod, others hesitate. Fear flickers in their eyes. But fear doesn't stop you, it sharpens you. You spend days preparing. You teach new spells. You set traps. You weave illusions to mask your movements. When the hunters come, they find ghosts. Forests that shift and twist. Shadows that move with minds of their own. Fires that burn without smoke. The battle is fierce and brutal. You lose some, but you gain more. The hunters never expected resistance. They didn't expect witches who fight. When the dust settles, the coven stands bloodied but unbroken. You realize this is only the beginning. Power tastes sweet and terrible. And you are no longer the scared woman who once stood before a judge, accused and broken. You are a force. Victory tastes like ashes. The coven's fierce defense pushed back the hunters, but the cost is heavy. The forest is scarred, trees felled, animals fled, the earth torn. Some of your witches didn't come back. Others are broken, their eyes hollow. You stand at the edge of a clearing, watching smoke curl into the sky like a morning shroud. It's a graveyard of what was once safe. You wonder if the cost is worth it. Power, you realize, isn't a gift, it's a burden. A shadow that stretches long and dark. The villagers call you a demon now, not just a witch. Their fear has morphed into hatred. You're a monster in their stories, a boogeyman lurking beyond the firelight. Even within your coven, doubt creeps in. Some question if fighting back only makes things worse. Others push for more aggression. The lines blur. You hold meetings in the hut, voices rising and falling like storms. You try to steer the fragile peace, but you feel the weight of every decision. One night, a message arrives, this time not by messenger but by vision. Oscar's face, pale and worn, appears in your dreams. She warns of betrayal within. Not all witches are allies. Some hunger for power, willing to sacrifice anyone. You wake in a cold sweat, heart pounding. Trust becomes a fragile thread. The hunters, regrouping, intensify their efforts. They use fear and lies to turn villages against each other. They hunt your people with fire and steel. You watch as neighbors become enemies, friends become foes. The world outside the forest grows darker. In the face of this, your resolve hardens. You cannot let fear win. But the cost is clear. The more power you wield, the more isolated you become. You think of your old life, the warmth of sun on your skin, the smell of fresh bread, the laughter you once shared. It feels like another lifetime. Now you are a symbol, a beacon of resistance and a target of rage. The weight of survival presses down on you. Every choice feels like a knife's edge. You wonder, can you save your people without losing yourself? The answer is uncertain. But one thing is clear: the war is far from over. Power demands sacrifice. But what it takes beyond that, the raw, bleeding parts of your soul, that's something no spell can fix. You thought becoming a witch meant giving up everything: your home, your name, your safety. You didn't expect to lose love. He was a hunter, not the black, cloaked monster you imagined. Just a man, sharp eyes, quiet resolve. His name was Elias. You met him at the edge of the forest. Not in battle, but in a chance encounter. Two souls caught in the same web of suspicion and survival. You couldn't trust him. You didn't want to. But you saw something human beneath the armor. One night, under a sliver of moon, He offered you a fragile truce. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. You laughed. It felt like breaking glass. "I don't trust hunters." He smiled, a soft curve like the flicker of a candle. "We're not all monsters." You let him in, cautiously. Love bloomed in stolen moments, whispers beneath ancient trees, hands brushing over firelight, laughter fragile as spring ice. But love in a world of fear is a dangerous magic. Your coven was suspicious. Oscar warned you. A hunter's love is a blade. Elias carried secrets you couldn't see. His duty and his heart were at odds. One evening, the hunters found your sanctuary. Elias faced his brethren, torn between two worlds. You begged him to choose. He hesitated. Betrayal tasted like ash on your tongue. The raid was brutal. Friends captured, coven scattered. Elias vanished into the shadows. You held the pieces of your broken heart as you fled deeper into the woods. Love had been a brief flicker, a light snuffed out too soon. Now, all that remains is the cold resolve to survive. The forest no longer feels like a sanctuary. It is a battleground, a cage, a place where the wind carries whispers of death. The hunters have changed. Gone are the reluctant men with doubt in their eyes. Now, they come with fire and fury, driven by zealotry and fear. Your coven is fractured but not defeated. Scattered but still breathing. Each day brings new danger. You move like a shadow, a ghost slipping between trees and time. But the hunters are relentless. They use every trick informants in villages, traps laid in the underbrush, burning crosses planted like warnings. The lines between friend and foe blur. Trust is a luxury no one can afford. One night, you find a trail, a group of hunters closing in on a group of young witches. You race through the darkness, heart pounding. The clash is brutal. Sparks fly as spells meet steel. You lose some, gain none. The pain of every loss sharpens your resolve. You realize the hunters don't just want to kill witches, they want to erase hope. You rally the survivors. You teach them to fight smarter, to hide deeper, to trust only as much as necessary. But the cost is high. You bear the weight of every life lost, every betrayal, every moment you weren't there to protect them. You become a symbol, not just of power, but of sacrifice. And as the hunt intensifies, you wonder how long can you keep running before you become the hunted yourself. The night was darker than you remembered, or maybe it was just your heart that had grown heavier, heavier than the dense canopy overhead. The forest had always been a refuge, the tangled roots and thick branches shielding you from a world that sought your destruction. But now, it felt like a cage, closing in with every whispered step and crackling leaf. The forest you once called home was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield poised on the edge of oblivion. Your coven was battered. The survivors, mere shadows of the fierce witches you had gathered over these harsh months. Faces once bright with hope were now etched with scars, both seen and unseen. You had gathered them from the darkest corners of this land. Women and men who had lost everything to fear and fire, now united by shared loss and fierce determination. What once was about survival had become something more a fight for your very existence, your legacy. The night hung heavy, thick with smoke, and the scent of damp earth and burning pine. You stood at the edge of the clearing, the flickering glow of torches casting long shadows, the air charged with a magic almost too potent to hold. Around you, your sisters, your coven, prepared their final defenses, chanting low incantations, their hands weaving gestures that summoned the ancient power of the forest. The hunters had found you. They came like a storm, a tide of dark leather and steel, their crosses raised high, voices chanting prayers so sharp they sliced through the night. Their eyes were hard, filled with zealotry, hate, and fear, the same fear that had fueled decades of hunts and executions, the fear of what they could not understand. You tightened your grip on your staff, feeling the rough bark beneath your calloused hands, the energy humming along its length like a living thing. The forest seemed to respond, leaves rustling as if whispering secrets and warnings. The earth beneath your feet trembled with the heartbeat of something ancient, the pulse of life itself joining yours in defiance. The first clash shattered the silence. Steel rang against spellcraft, torches flared against shadows. You moved like a tempest unleashed, your power raw, unrefined, but desperate. Each incantation was a plea, each movement a scream against the inevitable. Magic surged from your fingertips in waves of searing heat and icy cold, bending reality, twisting the very air. The witches fought with everything they had. You saw your sisters conjure walls of thorns that erupted from the soil, ensnaring hunters like living traps. You heard the scream of fireballs launched into the night, saw swords clashing against shimmering shields woven from spells. But the hunters were relentless. They pressed forward with brutal efficiency, their numbers overwhelming. You fought for Oscar, whose face haunted your dreams, the woman who had pulled you from death and taught you to wield your power. You fought for those who had fallen in battles past, for the friends lost to betrayal and fear. You fought for the broken promises of a world that never wanted you. Each swing of your staff, every chant, carried the weight of grief and rage and hope. The battle raged through the night. The forest was alive with the clash of wills, the cries of pain, the crackle of magic and flame. You barely noticed your own exhaustion, your body moving beyond limits you thought impossible. You were both fury and desperation, a force of nature unwilling to break. Witches fell, hunters faltered. The line between life and death blurred, as if the night itself held its breath. Time lost meaning. At one point you stumbled, your vision swimming, your body screaming for rest. But then, a voice, a whisper in your mind, Oscar's voice, urged you onward. You gritted your teeth, rising from the ground, chanting louder, your magic blazing brighter. You called upon the forest itself. Roots burst from the earth, tangling hunters in a living prison. Branches lashed out like serpents, striking with fierce precision. The wind carried your voice, a chorus of power and defiance. As dawn broke, pale light filtering through the battered trees, the battlefield fell silent. You stood alone, bloodied, wary, but undefeated. Your breath was ragged. Your body ached in places you didn't know could hurt. But your spirit burned brighter than ever. The hunters had failed. They had failed to erase you. You were the witch who refused to die. Yet the victory was hollow. The forest was scarred. Trees fell. Animals fled, the earth wounded. Your coven was broken, scattered like leaves in a storm. You wondered if this was what survival meant: endless struggle, endless loss. But even as the sun rose on the shattered woods, a small spark of hope flickered inside you. You had fought. You had survived. And as long as that flame burned, the story was not over. The witch's last stand was not the end. It was a beginning. The morning after the battle was quiet, too quiet. The forest, once alive with the cacophony of rustling leaves and bird calls, now felt hollow, as if the earth itself was mourning. Ash settled like a thin grey blanket over broken branches and scorched earth. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and loss. You wandered through the charred remains of your sanctuary, heart heavy but eyes burning with a fierce, stubborn light. This was the price of survival, destruction and renewal, death and rebirth. Your coven was scattered, some captured, others lost to the wilds. But from the ashes, a spark remained. You were alive, breathing, and defiant. You gathered what you could salvage: scraps of cloth, broken charms, fragments of spellbooks, and memories of those who had fallen. Each piece was a testament, a promise to rebuild, to keep fighting, to carry the flame forward. Rebirth wasn't immediate. It was slow and painful, like skin healing over a deep wound. The forest would grow back, but so would the scars. Your first days were spent in solitude, meditating under a broken oak, drawing strength from the earth beneath your feet. The pain in your bones was a reminder of the fight, but also of your resilience. You crafted new spells, soft ones at first, tending to the wounded land, coaxing life from the blackened soil. You whispered to the sprouts pushing through ash, promising protection, promising hope. Slowly, you began sending out calls to any surviving witches. Your voice was carried on the wind, woven into the dreams of those scattered and broken. One by one, they came, ghosts emerging from shadows, eyes wide with fear, but burning with determination. They brought stories of loss and survival, of families torn apart, of hunts that chased them from village to village. Together, you formed a new circle, a coven forged in fire and sorrow but bound by hope. You taught them the lessons learned in the ashes, power tempered by wisdom, strength born of unity, magic fueled by purpose. This new coven was smaller, quieter, but fiercer. The witch you once were, fragile, uncertain, had been replaced by someone tempered like steel. You became a beacon for those who had none. Word began to spread, not through fear this time, but through whispered tales of a witch who healed the earth and stood unbroken against the darkness. Some villages began to soften, their suspicion fading into cautious curiosity. A few brave souls brought gifts, herbs, fresh bread, offerings of peace. Not all welcomed you, of course. The hunters still prowled, relentless and vengeful, but the balance was shifting. You built a new home, hidden deep in a grove where the trees grew thick and the earth pulsed with magic, a place where healing began. The forest around you breathed again, vibrant and alive. You walked beneath a canopy of green, sunlight filtering through leaves like a blessing. In this rebirth, you found something unexpected: peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of acceptance. You remembered the pain, the losses, the betrayals, but you refused to be defined by them. Your magic grew stronger, not because it was fueled by vengeance, but because it was rooted in love. Love for the land, for your sisters and brothers in magic, for the fragile beauty of life itself. And with that love came power unlike any you had known before. You were no longer just the witch of the withered woods. You were the witch of the living forest. The forest had healed, but the world beyond still burned with hatred and fear. The hunters were relentless, and their fire threatened to consume everything you had rebuilt. The old ways, the whispered spells, the hidden circles were no longer enough. The time for secrecy was over. The time for a new order had come. You gathered your coven beneath the ancient oaks, the canopy filtering dappled sunlight onto determined faces. These witches were no longer frightened survivors. They were warriors and visionaries. They looked to you not just as a leader, but as the spark that could ignite a revolution. "We can no longer hide," you said, voice steady and clear. "We must stand and claim our place, not in the shadows, but in the light." There were murmurs of doubt. Fear still lingered, but the fire in your heart was contagious. You spoke of unity, of power drawn not from isolation but from solidarity. The coven was your family now, and together you would reshape the future. You began reaching beyond the forest, sending envoys to other covens and scattered witches across the land. Secret meetings were held in abandoned chapels, forgotten caves, and moonlit clearings. A network formed, wires of magic and trust weaving a tapestry of resistance. The world was changing, and the witches would change with it. You crafted new laws for this emerging order, rules to protect the innocent and punish the cruel. The coven's magic was no longer just for defense. It was a tool for justice and transformation. Healing the sick, protecting the weak, punishing those who preyed on the helpless. Word spread like wildfire, not of witches cursing and cackling, but of women and men who brought hope, who stood against tyranny. Some villages welcomed this change, their fear replaced by awe and gratitude. Others resisted, clinging to old prejudices and superstitions. But the new order was unstoppable. The hunters grew desperate, their methods more brutal and indiscriminate. They burned homes and fields, captured innocents, spread lies to fracture alliances. You and your coven fought back not just with magic, but with strategy and diplomacy. You forged alliances with outcasts and rebels, bandits and nobles alike. The witches became a force to be reckoned with, a force that no one could ignore. Within your circle, power balanced with wisdom. You trained your sisters and brothers not only in spells and potions, but in leadership and resilience. The wounds of the past were deep, but so was your determination. The new order was fragile, like a seedling breaking through stone, but it was growing. You walked through your forest home one evening, the wind whispering promises through the leaves. You thought of the journey, from a hunted girl, nameless and broken, to the leader of a rising power. The world would never be the same, because you and your coven had chosen to fight not just for survival, but for change. You were no longer the witch of the withered woods. You were the witch of the new dawn. The years that followed felt like a slow turning of the world's great wheel, one revolution grinding away the darkness and making room for light. The witches who once hid in trembling fear now stood tall, their magic woven into the very fabric of the land. The new order you helped forge was no mere rebellion. It was a transformation, a rewriting of the future. You often found yourself walking the forest paths, now thick with life and song. The trees whispered old secrets and new hopes alike, their branches heavy with the fruit of your labor. This was your home, not just the earth beneath your feet, but the community you built, the sisterhood and brotherhood bound by fire and blood and magic. But legacy is never simple. It carries weight and shadows, as well as light. Your name, once lost in fear and hatred, had become legend. The Witch of the Withered Woods was a story mothers told their children to warn and to inspire. But the Witch of the New Dawn, that was a symbol of resilience, power, and change. People came to you with questions, with hopes, even with fears. Some sought your guidance, others sought your judgment. You bore their expectations as if carrying the weight of the stars. One day, a young girl approached you, eyes wide with wonder and defiance. She reminded you of yourself so many years ago, fragile but fierce. "Will I be hunted too?" she asked. You looked at her and saw all the witches who had come before, and all those who would come after. "Not if we stand together," you said. "Our power is in unity, in hope, in the stories we tell each other." The world had changed, but the fight never truly ended. There would always be those who feared what they could not understand. But you had learned that fear could be met with courage, hatred with compassion, despair with hope. You trained new generations, teaching them not just spells but wisdom, resilience, and kindness. The Coven was a living thing, ever growing, ever adapting. You saw the land heal, the villages flourish, the old wounds begin to close. Magic was no longer whispered about in terror, but celebrated in song and story. Your story became a thread in the great tapestry of history, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted, always remembered. As you stood beneath the ancient oaks one evening, the sun setting fire to the sky, you felt a deep peace. The journey had been long and brutal, filled with loss and sacrifice, but it had been worth every moment, because you had survived, you had transformed, you had become legend, and your legacy would live on. Long after the fires had faded, long after the hunters were gone, you were the witch who refused to die, the witch who changed the world, the witch who lived forever.